All right, guys, welcome back. This is your boy, Justin Pugh. Welcome back to Net Worth. We've been gone for a little while, but now we're back. Football season is in full swing. OTAs are over. The draft's over. We have a little bit of a break. We have a little bit of a lull. And what I want to do is dive into certain divisions. If you guys have been following my page, what I have going on, I dove into this with Colt McCoy, Jay Gruden, AQ Shipley with Underdog.
Not saying he's a bad man. I'm just saying he doesn't have his pockets aren't as big.
That's a fact. There's a lot of owners like that.
Thank you. Look at us getting along.
Shout out to Underdog Fantasy. We dove into all the divisions, but I didn't get to talk the entire time. I didn't get to give my entire insight. So what we're going to do right now is I'm going to bring on a very special guest, my producer, my partner in Athlete Podcast Network, Alex Yungvirt. Alex, welcome to the show.
This is my time to shine, I guess, right? No more behind the camera. Now I'm in front of the lens. So I'm excited to kick this off. We're starting with the AFC North, which I'm acutely familiar with over my years as a Browns fan. So originally from Cleveland, based in Cincinnati now. So I've already got half of the AFC North covered just from that alone. But looking forward to getting this kicked off if you want to jump right into it.
Before we jump into it, I think everyone's going to be reading your hat real quick. Talk to me about Athletes Are the New Media, Athlete Podcast Network. This is the one time I got to let you shine. This has been your baby that we finally have to fruition. So talk me through the hat real quick.
Yeah, so, I don't want this to turn into an interview necessarily, but just to give some love to the athletes, right? We're letting the athletes do the talking now. Athletes Are the New Media. And no more of the, local beat reporters trying to steer the ship and put words in the players' mouths. So it sounds a little bit rebellious the way that I just mentioned it, but just know that through the Athlete Podcast Network, through Net Worth, through the shows that we'll continue to launch and the perspectives that we'll share, you're getting the real organic material and not just something that's, spun up behind a podium.
And we love our beat writers. The beat writers are the microphone to the fans. But what I will say is players out there, either you give those beat writers a story to write about you, or they're going to come up with the story. So when we say athletes are the new media, it's controlling your own narrative, controlling what you put out there, and controlling how fans view you. Fight for your own image. A lot of teams out there say, don't talk to the media, don't say anything. I truly believe we need to flip that on its head. Athletes need to start talking about it. So we'll get off our high horse. We'll get off our podium. You guys have seen the GM series. We're going to keep rocking with that. I did the Giants to start. We're probably going to do some more of the NFC East there. But before we get into the NFC East and where I spent most of my career, we got to talk about Hard Knocks and one of our favorite teams in the AFC North, which will be on Hard Knocks this season. First time we've ever had an entire division on Hard Knocks. Let's dive right into the team that Alex knows best, a team that I am very high on. If you saw the Underdog, got a lot of backlash from Gruden, McCoy, and Shipley on this one. It's the Cleveland Browns. Alex, I'm going to let you kick this off. Let's talk about last year and why it was such an amazing feat for them to even make the playoffs.
Yeah, so you go 11-6. The Browns came in second in the division. End of year awards, you've got Jim Schwartz, assistant coach of the year, Kevin Stefanski, second time, winning the coach of the year award. Joe Flacco, straight off the couch, comeback player of the year.
That's not going to happen again. They said comeback player of the year now has to be coming off injury. Can't just come from being off the couch and old like me and Joe Flacco, or not having a great year, or being on the bench like Geno Smith was the year before. They want to see guys coming back from injury, which actually kind of lends itself to potentially the next comeback player of the year, Nick Chubb, which you're going to talk about here in a second. But dive back in. You got Myles Garrett, defensive player of the year, before I cut you off.
Yep. Yeah. And I want to just call out that apparently they didn't change that because of Joe Flacco, because of the couch situation. Apparently that's been, I guess, cooking on the back burner for 2 or maybe 3 years now. I think it was 2 years, like you said, after the Geno Smith situation. So it's worth noting that that's not like a reaction, that's been going in the background. But
I got no consideration. I was coming off torn ACL, haven't played in a year, first snap Sunday Night Football, but whatever. NFL doesn't want to show O-lineman any love.
You covered both bases, couch and injury.
Exactly.
But But yeah, so you got 5 starting quarterbacks for the Browns. You had Deshaun, obviously. Then you had week 3, I think it was. They threw in Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who's a rookie out of UCLA. They got I was at that game. They got absolutely trashed by the Ravens. Then comes PJ Walker, who beats the 49ers. So if there's a testament to coaching and, a crazy great defense, that's one. Then after that, you obviously get Joe Flacco. And then the last game of the year, they brought your boy from Arizona,
Jeff Driscoll. He came in at the end of the
Jeff
season.
Driscoll. He played at the final game of the season here in Cincinnati against the Bengals when they were basically, it was like a reserves game after locking up postseason aspirations. So, yes, Jeff Driscoll. And like you said, there's some injury last year, a lot of injury last year. I think they said, what was it, like 25, somewhere between like 25 and 30% of their, spend was on IR. Their like roster spend was on IR. So, Deshaun obviously has shoulder injury, the Nick Chubb injury week 2, and then you lose 3 starting tackles. They lost Joel for a game, at guard.
They lost Jack Conklin. They lost Jack Conklin for the season. DeJuan Jones went down at one point.
That was week 1 too. Conklin was week 1. DeJuan Jones, had an ACL or something. I can't remember it for sure, but I remember he went out for the season. You even lost Dustin Hopkins, the kicker, who's having a phenomenal season. He went
Rodney
out.
Rodney McLeod got hurt. Jedrick Willis Jr. got hurt. Mo Hurst got hurt. I mean, the list goes on and on. I'm just reading it off. Ty Nsekhe came in. He got hurt. They had an insane amount of injuries. To have that many injuries on the offensive line and to come back and have a playoff season, to play 5 starting quarterbacks. Has there ever been a team in NFL history to have 5 starting quarterbacks in a season and still make the playoffs? We'll get into why that happened, but let's just kind of keep diving into last season and kind of the injuries they went through.
So, I want to talk a little bit about the additions, because one thing that stands out about this offseason for the Browns is they retained almost all of their talent, both from a coaching perspective and a player perspective. The big hit, probably the biggest hit that they took, I know people are gonna be like, oh, it was Joe Flacco. Honestly, it was Bill Callahan going to Tennessee with his son, Brian Callahan.
Apparently, he didn't even give him a price. He didn't give him any price, correction whatsoever. He got his son and made him pay for his services.
Yeah, well, he's definitely a Hall of Fame coach. We know that, specifically offensive line. But yeah, like the turnover was to a minimum this past year. So who did they add? And this is my follow-up point here is the people that they added were quality, for the most part, quality players that wanted to come to Cleveland. There wasn't a bunch of overpays. There wasn't a bunch of weird deals. We do know that Andrew Berry likes to take, former high round draft picks, some of the lost players, try to fix them. There's a couple guys on this list, but, you mentioned this underdog. You have the morale guy, Jameis Winston, that they signed. Jameis was signed.
Doesn't love Jameis Winston, by the way. Jameis Winston is one of the best guys to have in the locker room. And before we get started on that, let me just make this very, very clear. You need to have morale in a locker room, especially in a place like Cleveland. No offense, Cleveland. It's not Miami, Florida. The sun isn't shining. Guys aren't naturally happy. You bring in a guy like Jameis Winston, who's going to be telling jokes at the cafeteria table, messing around pre-practice. Honestly, it raises morale. It makes the practices go better. He comes in and gives those crazy pregame speeches and all X and Y. Low-key, Jameis Winston might be my favorite addition to the Cleveland Browns this offseason.
It's not exactly apples to apples, but you had a similar effect in New York, right? So, being behind or having exposure to some of those Twitter accounts, and I've started to wear the New York Giants badge here this past season now, being so heavily integrated with the franchise and the fans, who I have a lot of respect for. But there was a lot of complaining about the O-line from Giants fans early on in the season. You stepped in there. You brought we call it the glue guy. You brought some of that energy, specifically to the O-line. I can't really speak to any ripples or waves that you made extending beyond your position groups, but that's the same. To put it in perspective, is the same type of energy. And I actually want to get your take on this one, because another one of the big signings, at least in my opinion, were Jordan Hicks, linebacker. So in the rear view mirror here, we have Anthony Walker, A-Walk, who I think signed down in Miami. He was a solid morale guy, vocal leader, ran the defense. And we also lost Sione Takitaki, who was a really solid linebacker for us. So now you're getting Jordan Hicks, who I know you know. Talk to me a little bit about Jordan.
Jordan Hicks is a leader of men, one of the best linebackers I played with. He's had success everywhere he's gone. When he was in Philadelphia, they won a Super Bowl. He came to Arizona. He was the leader, tackling machine, had the green dot on the back of his helmet, went to Minnesota, led that defense. We're going to drop this image. Jordan had this compartmental syndrome in his leg where he got hit twice in a row on his leg. It was like an insane bruise. The pressure couldn't escape. He almost lost his leg last year. He sliced that thing open, let the pressure drain out of his leg, literally cut his leg wide open, just let it sit there in the hospital for a few weeks, sewed it back up, and was back on the field. That's the kind of dog the Cleveland Browns are getting next year. He's an unbelievable human being. To top it all off, great family. He's going to bring a great energy, and on a defense that's already established. You know, Gruden mentioned this in the podcast. They got a little leaky last year with a sure tackler and a leader like Jordan Hicks, who's going to be at, whatever responsibility he has to be at, whether that's filling the A gap, filling the B gap. He will be there. He will make that play. He will make sure the guys are in the right spot. It's one of the low-key additions on the field that probably will make the biggest defense of improvement for the defense of any signing this offseason.
So on that defensive note, you also have on the defense, the Quentin Jefferson signing, defensive tackle. So they're bolstering the interior of the defense, giving Myles Garrett, giving Zadarius Smith, giving Obo Okoronkwo additional lanes to the quarterback. So if there's anything that I've noticed this offseason, that they're bolstering down that DT space. They extended Mo Hurst, who unfortunately got injured last year. They extended Shelby Harris. So from a defensive standpoint, and they extended Zadarius Smith. So from a defensive standpoint, they only got better. And this was the number one, or one of the top, let's say, 3 defenses in the league last year for the amount of weeks that they spent with these like historical yards given up or not given up numbers. Like, there's reason to be optimistic about that this year. But some other, accessory defensive signings, which these guys are all, I'm sure, fighting for roster points. We'll have to check in with our guy, Jack Duffin.
Shout out to Jack. He's always there for us.
Devin Bush, who's a linebacker. He played as well in the AFC North here for the Steelers for some time. Then you've got cornerbacks, Tony Brown, Justin Hardy. He was a New York guy. Jets. He was Pro Bowl, I want to say. Yeah, Pro Bowl, special teamer, Cleveland native. So he's playing for multiple reasons. But if you switch to the offensive side of the ball now, you've got Tyler Huntley, who was playing in playoff games for the Ravens. And playing pretty well overall while Lamar was out.
I think not only is that going to be a huge addition for the Browns in terms of like production on the field. We talk about Jameis and what he's able to do off the field. Obviously, he can still play at a very high level. But if you're bringing in someone to replace Deshaun Watson, I don't think Jameis is necessarily the mold that is going to go in and replace what he can do. Bring in Tyler Huntley to still be able to run some of those zone reads. We're bringing in a new offensive coordinator too. That's something that everyone wants to harp on. Gruden and I started arguing about it. I had to go back and check on that, but they're bringing in Ken Dorsey, who I think is going to make a lot of adjustments. He was previously in Buffalo, and you saw what they were able to do with Josh Allen. So I really think you're going to blend what Stefanski loves to do in running the ball with what Ken Dorsey was able to do with Josh Allen. And it's really going to make the Cleveland Browns a whole lot more dynamic. Everyone's, talking about, hey, they love to run the ball, but let's look at the personnel and what they're going to be able to do. Nick Chubb coming off catastrophic injury. You have Jerome Ford, who played admirably when he was in there. The other running back is, Deontay Foreman, who played great. Naheem Hines, who Ken Dorsey worked with, and he'll be out of the backfield, third down back. Really, we're going to be throwing the ball. Amari Cooper's about to get broke off. Jerry Jeudy already got broke off. You look at those guys. You look at the offensive line, David Njoku, Elijah Moore. The Cleveland Browns are going to be probably in shotgun a little bit more than people probably think or based off of what they did last year. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I know Deshaun likes his empty sets. One thing that I want to touch on, and it's honestly, as a Browns fan, if I'm being unbiased, the whole offensive coordinator situation is a big question mark right now. There's all of the he said, she said about what happened in Buffalo, and Ken up in the booths swiping the iPad off and papers flying everywhere and throwing his tantrum, and obviously then you have the Deshaun question marks, which we'll touch on here shortly, but we just don't know what to expect from that. All signs right now are pointing, at least from just media leaks and recognition of training camps and such, is that Ken is going to be taking the offense over from Kevin Stefanski, which is a pretty big deal because Kevin has pretty much white knuckled that in these past years. And I don't know if that was a testament to his relationship with Van Pelt, the previous offensive coordinator, or maybe his own job security. But Kevin Stefanski has made many quarterbacks look better than how they had either A, previously performed, or B, what their pedigree states. So I don't know, man. That's a big question mark in terms of how the offense is going to go. But one thing is for sure, they're going to air it out this year.
Oh yeah, 100%. And based on what I saw in New York last year, and sorry to cut you off there, I just wanted to jump in there because of what I saw. Dayball and Kafka in New York, it's always a back and forth. If the offensive coordinator and the head coach both are offensive guys, you're going to get a little bit of both. They're going to be in there. They're going to be game planning together. They're going to have different perspectives. I'm not going to act like Ken Dorsey didn't get fired last year. He did get fired, so it's not like they're bringing in this rock star. Stefanski's definitely going to still have the final say on whatever's called, but I just think that Ken Dorsey's going to bring in some of that Josh Allen, shotgun, let the quarterback do a whole lot more. When you pay someone as much as they paid Deshaun Watson, and you have as much talent as you have around him in the passing game, with the running back situation being a little bit murky, I just know they're going to have to throw the ball a little bit more than they have in the past.
For sure. And yeah, I think they're even going to be tossing the ball to running backs. You've got Jerome Ford, who's been a pretty solid pass catching running back that they've used even in that position last year, caught touchdowns. I don't know if I'm on board with you with your take regarding the third down back situation. I think that Deontay Foreman's going to get some run and almost replace Kareem Hunt's role. And that's typically the role that Kareem Hunt served. So I'm interested to see how that shakes out. But if we were talking, going back to the quarterback situation, you were giving some love to Tyler Huntley. You think about this quarterback room right now. And also think about last year, Andrew Berry, Josh Dobbs situation, right? We have Deshaun Watson, who's going to be your starter. Then you have Jameis, who's probably going to be your backup. Then you have Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who's now a second-year quarterback that they like out of UCLA. I can't remember if they took him in the third round or something, maybe fifth at the latest. I can't remember. We'll have to look that up. But he got some run last year. They tried him even before PJ Walker, who has experience starting as a quarterback in this league. And then your fourth quarterback is now Tyler Huntley. So we can't expect them to roster all of those guys. I don't know that Tyler Huntley will be able to get to the practice squad. So my thinking is that you could potentially see this battle between Tyler Huntley and Dorian Thompson-Robinson in the preseason.
Who was a fifth round pick there? He was a fifth round pick for the Browns. Yeah.
And so I think that one of those guys are going to end up getting dealt for Josh Dobbs situation, third round pick or whatever he got from Arizona from an Andrew Berry, just basically yard sale. Because there's a lot. This roster is all almost set. Like there's a lot of great players that are not going to make this roster just because of how deep this roster is. And maybe that's where we head next. You've already alluded to some of the position groups, but if we're just talking about like on paper, standout highlight players, you've got Deshaun, you have Coop, you have Jerry Jeudy now.
Well, we don't have
Nick
Coop
Chubb,
just yet.
obviously.
He might be holding out. I mean, Jack Duffin believes the contract gets done with Amari, but he's not there yet, and he's not happy.
Well, there's optimism coming from the organization. So there, you don't see him requesting a trade like you do for Trey Hendrickson, like you do for T. Higgins, some of the other guys in the division. Even now, you've got
Brandon,
unhappy
the
contract
whole
situation.
Brandon Ayuk situation out there, yeah.
Ayuk, you've got Cam Hayward, talking into the microphone right now about his contract situation. Yeah. All we've really had is, and no one in Cleveland is really worried about this at this point. All you've really had is just that he didn't show up to mandatory mini camp or whatever. But, still getting back to these names, Myles Garrett, Za'Darius Smith, Dalvin Tomlinson was a rock for them last year.
I played against Dalvin Tomlinson in New York with the Giants. Dalvin Tomlinson is as steady as they come. Great addition. Glad that he's, back with the Browns again.
Dustin Hopkins has been a really solid kicker for the squad. Probably the best trio of cornerbacks in the league between Martin Emerson, Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome. You've got,
and then throw in Justin Hardy, who's a special teams ace. I mean, they might have the best defensive back room in the league.
And then your guys, the offensive guards.
Don't even get me started about the Browns offensive line. Love the Browns offensive line, everything they have going. I will think they will miss Bill Callahan, but you're hopeful they'll carry over on a lot of the things that they learn and then kind of set that foundation going forward. I mean, let me touch on it real quick. You have Jedrick Willis Jr., who's been a really solid left tackle for you. Hasn't been, the best left tackle in the league. He's had some injuries. We touched on that before. But when you get inside, this is the rock of the Cleveland Browns. Joel Bitonio, who I think is probably the best left guard in football. He's continued to do it year in and year out. You have Wyatt Teller playing right guard, who is the best right guard in football. So, I mean, if you're not number one, you're number two. You're really splitting hairs there. What they did in the draft, they went out and got Zach Zintner from Michigan, who had a pretty tough injury, but nothing you can't come back for. I think as Joel Bitonio and Wyatt Teller age, Zach Zintner becomes the heir apparent to either one of those spots. Ethan Posick in the middle there. It makes your job a whole lot easier at center when you have two of the best guards in football on either side of you. And then you're getting Jack Conklin back, who, when healthy, Jack Conklin's been a great right tackle in this league. You have DeJuan Jones. If anything were to happen to either of the tackles, he could go in there and play. The one guy I want to highlight too, and he's my boy, and he's a Super Bowl champion, is Brian Allen. He was a midseason or a late offseason addition. He's started for the LA Rams. He knows this offense, same system Stefanski runs that McVay runs. He can come in and be a plug and play guy at the center spot if there's ever any issues there. So there's a reason why they brought Brian Allen in. Ethan Posick has had ups and downs when he was in Seattle. But I think having Brian Allen there, having that veteran in the room is really, really solid for that group. So I absolutely love what they did at the offensive line position. You add in David Njoku at the tight end, who's always in line. He's kind of that sixth offensive lineman. He can block. He finally came into his own. We've seen with tight ends over and over again. Rarely do you have a Sam Laporta situation where you have a rookie come in and play so well so early at the tight end position. They have to learn to block, running routes, getting hit, learning the playbook, learning how to be a pro. It's very hard to come in and be an impact player day one as a tight end. David Njoku has finally come into his own, and he is a premier Pro Bowl type player at that position. There are not many weaknesses for the Cleveland Browns on offense.
I even want you, if we have any AFC North fans doing homework coming out of this episode, look up this undrafted guard that they signed. I think he started at Alabama and then went to Miami, the U. His name's Javion Cohen. I think he's slept on, super skilled, could be one of the top 3-5 undrafted steals of this past draft. And then you've got going to be someone that the Browns are going to be keeping an eye on because the guards are getting old, and they're not overly, I guess, stacked, or they don't have a ton of depth at that position. You had a swing. Really, I'm sure he's played everywhere. He's out of Cincinnati, but I think he's in like his fourth year now, or maybe, his fourth year. James Hudson, the third. So he's been serviceable for them, especially because we know they've been super thin from injury this past season or two. So,
that's where I like Zach Zentner. I think Zach Zentner is going to be ready to roll for the season.
He will.
And he's a mauler. Played at Michigan. Michigan guys are plug and play offensive linemen. So I do think they address that position. You need to have one good swing guy. And then you have your backup center. You have Luke Whippler, and Brian Allen. Yeah. So I think you have some quality interior depth. I really do. I mean, I don't see a lot of weakness in the Cleveland Browns. I'm looking at the wide receiver depth chart. I think, if anything were to happen to Amari Cooper or Jerry Jeudy, you're relying on some young guys, Jamari Thrash. The question marks really come down to Deshaun Watson. It really is. If Deshaun can be that guy. If Deshaun can be that guy and even be 75% of what he once was, the Cleveland Browns are the favorite to win the division. They have too much talent, and everyone's going to go crazy on me and say, hey, this is insane that you say this with the Ravens and the Bengals and the Steelers. It is the best division in football. Don't get it wrong. The Cleveland Browns are my pick to win the AFC North. And it all depends on the right arm, maybe the right shoulder of Deshaun Watson.
So we talked about, we've loved up on the Browns enough. We know we probably didn't even give them enough love based on how their roster stands and the performances that we've seen out of even some of the young guys, like Ronnie Hickman, for example, came in and crushed last year while Grant Delpit was down. Grant Delpit got extended recently. Juan Thornhill back there, Rodney McLeod back there. Lots of solid players, but the question marks for the Browns are going to be, I can think of three things off the top of my head, and I want to take a different perspective of them from what you traditionally hear about some of these, bullet points. We already talked a little bit about the question mark with the offense, handing off the offense from Stefanski over to Ken Dorsey.
Yep.
And then you've got the question mark with the Deshaun Watson situation. Is he gonna be the Deshaun and blah 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 blah? My unbiased opinion here is we've been seeing Deshaun get inch better and better as the media situation that he has dealt with and all of those controversies have drifted further away. So he's becoming more comfortable in the spotlight, which I think is helping his on-field presence. That's just my opinion. Beyond that, we heard in the Underdog episode, show me one play that, Deshaun Watson, where he was looking like his old self, or he was looking like Texas Deshaun Watson.
Roll the clip.
Deshaun has not done anything that can make anybody believe that he can get back to what he was at Houston. Show me one play, show me one series, one drive. I haven't seen it yet.
Show me one play, show me one series, one drive. I haven't seen it yet. One drive.
Pump fake.
I haven't seen it yet.
Crosses midfield. Deshaun Watson all the way to the Ravens 40 before he was knocked out of bounds by Patrick Queen.
He dotted up the Ravens in the second half. The AFC, championship game Ravens. Lamar
Big
Jackson MVP
Ravens.
Ravens. Yes, he dotted him up 14 for 14 in the second half. His defense picked him up too. They were firing on all cylinders of the ball, except kind of that special teams. You had James Prochet at one point fumble the ball on the 5-yard line, and there was the Ravens scored 3 times on that specific drive where they kept getting it called back before they inevitably scored and took the points. But that is the Deshaun Watson that we saw last, because after that 14 for 14 performance, he goes out for the season with a shoulder injury. So we find out that he had a bum ankle, a bum throwing shoulder, and went 14 for 14. Let me get your football take on this. Is that luck? Did he just get lucky against the Ravens, or is that progress?
It's definitely progress. But for me, Deshaun Watson has been everything off the field. Obviously, had all the issues and dealing with all that drama. I think he's compartmentalized that to some degree. He's moved past it. It's been drama filled for his entire career. Then he comes out last year and gets injured. I think this year we will see the best Deshaun Watson we've seen in the last 3 or 4 years. I really do. He's able to understand. He's going to get made fun of. People are going to make jokes about him in the massage and all that shit. He had the injuries last year. The team is so talented around him. We don't need Deshaun Watson to carry the Browns like he did with the Texans for all those years. Just screw it. D-Hop is down there somewhere and throw it up. He doesn't have to do that. Now, can he play within the system? Gruden, Shipley, Colt McCoy, they're not sure if he can do that. But because of the talent and what Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski have done to put a maximum talent around him, I think if he just takes what the defense gives him, the Browns are your AFC North champions. And the reason, and we're going to touch on this, what makes the Browns so good is Andrew Berry. The best person in that whole organization, well, besides Jimmy Haslam, it's the Jimmy Haslam, Andrew Berry 1-2 punch. Jack Duffin talks about it at length. I've done a podcast. We'll plug here Jack Duffin and what he says. But the Browns spend more than anybody. They pay cash up front because Jimmy Haslam's got a boatload of it, and they give it to the players and they prorate it over the deals. The Browns are banking on the salary cap going up every single year. They have more players making $10 million than anyone else. At any given time, the Cleveland Browns have $30 million more in player talent on the field than any other team. That is a strategic advantage that you can't overlook. So Cleveland Browns, be happy. You may be in Cleveland, Ohio, no offense, but your owner's spending money like he's down on vacation and he's got money burned a hole through his pocket. That is what is going to take the Cleveland Browns to the next level. They spend the money. They're not scared to do it. We have episodes talking about it. Alex, quickly touch on that, and then let's jump into the wins-loss and give our predictions.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with what you said, except for the fact, you're in Cleveland, Ohio. We get to be in Cleveland, Ohio. There's a big difference.
You're right.
And the last thing I want to say related to my question marks is the Nick Chubb situation. Not enough people are giving credit to this man. His injury at Georgia was worse than this one. And he came back and became Nick Chubb that everyone knows today. So from the second round. So I want to, that'll be where I leave it with Nick Chubb, but I would be remiss not to mention, that's obviously a question mark. If you do, speaking of Jack Duffin, if you follow the money, like he says, Nick Chubb could potentially be starting week 1 because they reworked his contract in the offseason. It's highly incentive based. Everything is good between the organization and him in terms of camaraderie and excitement and energy. Everything's solid. So based on the way that deal gets reworked, it looks like he's going to want to be playing week 1 from a financial standpoint. I just hope they don't rush him back and do something silly, but I don't take that Nick Chubb as that type. So let's wrap this up with what the 2024 schedule looks like.
All right, so I'll give my predictions here. You keep track of it, and we'll roll through this. If you disagree, we'll have a little back and forth. But Dallas, I think they come out firing with a W. I don't like what Dallas is doing. They don't have Dak signed. They don't have CD. They don't have Micah. They're a lot of unhappy guys. They don't spend money at all. They're the cheapest team, one of the cheapest spenders in the NFL. Jacksonville, I like Jacksonville a lot.
It's week 1 in Cleveland. If you ever been to a Cleveland Browns game, week 1 in Cleveland, the energies are high. The fans are going crazy. It's packed. I think the get-in rate right now is almost $600 for nosebleeds. So they'll be ready. But yes, Jacksonville, they're at Jacksonville. What do you got?
I got Jacksonville win. We got my Giants week 3. Look, I love my Giants, but the Browns are one of the best teams. They're going to get the win. I hope not. I hope the Giants beat them, but for this prediction, I got to go Giants getting the win. Raiders, they don't have a quarterback. Browns are going to just demolish them from a defensive line standpoint. They're winning again. The Commanders, young quarterback, another win. I think the Browns start out 5-0. You get to the Eagles, I think they catch an L there. The Bengals,
That's in Philly.
It's in Philly. It's a tough place to play. Bengals, first game of the season. The Browns always play the Bengals tough, and they always get after them. What just happened?
Yeah.
Something happened. I don't know.
No, you're good. The Browns have the Bengals number.
They win.
Sure.
They win. What I will say is the Ravens, so the week 7, Bengals win. They lose to the Ravens. And you know what I think happens? I think they're a little bit asleep at the wheel against the Ravens. Not against the Ravens, coming off that Ravens loss. And I think they pick up a cheap L against the Chargers. Chargers play a really good style of football. Harbaugh's going to come in. I think it's just one that they fell asleep. They're looking towards the bye week. You can't give them all the wins in the world. They come out pissed off after the bye week. We have at the Saints to get a win. Steelers, we get a win. Broncos, we get a win. Chiefs are going to be dominant this year with Patrick Mahomes if they can stop getting arrested off the field. Lost there to the Chiefs. Beat the Bengals again. We'll talk about the Bengals later. I think we lose to the Dolphins. And here I go. I think we beat the Ravens to end the season. You kind of conquer the bully heading into the playoffs. We're looking at a 12-5 record. AFC North champion. All coming down to that last game with the Ravens. And that's where I think they pulled off to win the AFC North. Head into the playoffs on a high. That is your 2024 Cleveland Browns breakdown. Let us know how you guys feel about it. Comment below. Alex, anything I left out?
No, the only thing I want to underscore about this schedule, especially because we're going to be doing these videos for the rest of the AFC North, and then we'll combine them for a mega video. But some things we need to highlight here. We've got home games against Dallas. Obviously, they're AFC North competitors. The Chargers, the Chiefs, the Dolphins. So they're playing some of their toughest games, other than like the Eagles, at home. They have a Week 10 bye, which you can attest to, like a middle of the season bye is
great
solid,
bye week. Yep.
Whereas last year it was like a week 5 bye or something that they had last year. So a big shift there. They're playing some of their toughest games at home. And I think that's going to bode them well. They do have a tough end of the season there. Everyone's hoping that Week 17 against the Ravens is just a reserves game for locking up a playoff spot already. However, they could be fighting for a 1 seed at that rate. So we'll see what happens with it. This is good. I think that we're pretty on par here with the way that the Browns are shaping up. Which team are we going to next?
Let's jump to, we ended with the Ravens. We think they're going to be fighting for the 1 spot with the Browns. Let's jump to the Ravens next.